Friendship is becoming one of the greatest challenges of modern life. In fact, research shows that loneliness is rising and many adults struggle to build close relationships. Today, we're joined by Dirk Bellamy. He's the author of Why We Ask. Starting from his own experience of having virtually no close friends, Dirk set out to understand why is it that some people can develop rich, meaningful relationships and others remain disconnected. In this conversation, we're going to explore how friendship is formed, why it matters, and how parents and educators can help children learn the skill that many adults are still trying to figure out. All this and more on this episode of BaseCamp Live.
Mountains. We all face them as we seek to influence the next generation. Get equipped to conquer the challenges, summit the peak, and shape exceptionally thoughtful, compassionate, and flourishing human beings. We call it Ancient Future Education for raising the next generation. Welcome to BaseCamp Live. Now your host, Davies Owens.
Welcome to BaseCamp Live. Davies Owens, your host, here with you on the journey of raising up the next generation. We are on top of the summer conferences. They're happening. If you're listening to this episode as it was dropped, we are just weeks away from being at the SCL and ACCS and other conferences this summer, and I look forward to meeting many of you in person. It's always a joy to connect with you. So if you're at a conference, stop by our Zipcast and BaseCamp Live booth and give us a big hello. It'd be great to see you in person. Big shout out in this episode to Doug Dyer, head of school at the Rivendell Academy in Columbus, Georgia, and Jake Bush, headmaster of Veritas Academy in Savannah, Georgia. Thank you both for encouraging your school to listen and be a part of BaseCamp Live and Zipcast. Our guest today, Dirk Bellamy, spent almost 30 years in corporate America as an engineering manager, honing his ability to understand and solve problems. And some years ago, he noticed that he had almost no close friends. He treated it as a problem that needed a real solution. And what he learned changed his life. The journey became his first book, Why We Ask, a practical guide to purpose and connection. And he and his wife have made it part of their mission to help others on this journey of finding friendship. They live in Oregon. They have 3 amazing sons, 1 delightful daughter-in-law, and 1 apparently nasty Siberian husky. All that to say, I can't wait for you to hear this conversation with Dirk Bellamy. Before we jump into it, as always, a big thank you to our partners who come alongside us with great resources that are genuinely helpful, like the book Wisdom and Eloquence by Robert Littlejohn and Chuck Evans, a great resource that they reworked recently for parents, as well as our friends at WisePhone. And by the way, if you go to the partner page on the BaseCamp Live website, there's actually a discount on the WisePhone. It is a phenomenal tool. It gives you all the functionality of a smartphone that you would need in a work environment or for practical reasons, but it leaves out all of the entertainment distractions and addictions that come with a lot of the social media. Also, a big shout out and thank you to Life Architects, as well as to the Herzog Foundation, and of course, our own Zipcast. By the way, we've done some exciting updates for Zipcast. If you're not on board with Zipcast, or even if you are, you're going to see some improvements coming in the new school year, including a new opportunity to access our full content library. You know, we have over 1,000 individual segments on everything from classical Christian education topics to parenting best practices to spiritual formation. All of those are now available for schools to go in the library and actually pick in the order that they want to add those to their own local recordings, news and announcements, fireside chats, testimonies, and updates from the school. So there's some real exciting Zipcast updates that you're going to want to know about it. Go to zipcast.media and learn more. Without further ado, let's jump into this conversation with Dirk Bellamy. Dirk, welcome to BaseCamp Live.
Thank you, Davies. I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, I want to jump right in and have you share some of your story, because I think a lot of people can relate to, as I've read it, just some of the challenges of friendship and growing up, and ultimately what caused you to write the book. Share a bit of your own journey.
Yeah, so we had the privilege back in 2017 of being able to relocate to Indonesia for a year to support my wife's nonprofit work in anti-human trafficking. Terrific experience, you know, and it was interesting to try to adapt to culture there. We were not successful, actually. You know, and that sort of made me aware of how important it is to understand the culture of the people you're trying to befriend, you know, and it's not just a language barrier, right? It's all this background and, you know, formation that we sort of carry with us that we're not even really consciously aware of. So that was a challenge for us to really to try to form friendships, form relationships in Indonesia. And when we came back in 2018, what I realized was was something so startling to me. I kind of looked around and I asked this question. You've probably heard people ask this question, like if at 2 a.m. if something goes wrong, who are you going to call, right? Who's on your list? And it's wonderful if you've got 3 or 4 people on your list. And I don't know, maybe you do, Davies. Do you have a few?
I'd like to think that. It's interesting. I remember that question came up, just to comment on this exact question, a number of years ago at Ambrose. We were having a father's prayer time, and a dad who had just shared some things that were on his heart about friendship. And he literally asked that question and asked for a show of hands. And I think that there was only of like 50 men in the room, maybe 1 or 2 could say they had more than 3. And then you got down to who has 2, who has 1, who has 0. And I bet half the men in the room raise their hand. And we're just, they're just being honest. If everything fell apart at 2 a.m, they have nobody they could call. And it's really it's a huge problem in our culture today.
And, in 2018, I was one of those people. I would have raised my hand and say, I felt like I have friends, but they weren't really close friends. They wouldn't really want to take that phone call at 2 a.m. They might kind of, okay, fine, out of a sense of obligation, but that's not really what we're going for here. We want these, close connected relationships, we're actually excited to carry each other's burdens. Right. And I had 0 in 2018, and I talked with my wife, and, I'm just kind of like, how, what do you think? What are your ideas about how to solve this? And she's like, well, maybe you should just set some time aside and go try to invest in some relationships. And I had this moment of panic. I'm like, she's giving me permission to spend time on friendships. And I don't know what to do with that time.
Wow.
So if I'm going to go devote 2 hours every Thursday evening, and I'm going to invest in a relationship, what am I going to do in those 2 hours that's actually going to move the needle, to take a person who's familiar, who's, friendly, and, sort of transition that person into a really close relationship who's excited to take that call at 2 a.m., which hopefully never comes, but that's the thought exercise, right?
Well, and again, to frame kind of this whole conversation with so many who are parents and educators, I mean, we are in the business of discipling our children to navigate all of life. And I think, probably 5, 10 years, 20 years ago, the idea that you had to be this intentional to train up somebody to have a friend, I mean, it was just like, the problem was get off your, quit watching TV and go out and go play with your friends. Well, that assumption isn't there anymore. And a lot of it, to your point, is the art, if you will, of how to be a friend, to make a friend. Like, this is now something we now have to add to our list of things to actually be purposeful about. So continue on with your journey. I mean, so you were here, you are going, okay, I got some time on Thursday. What did you figure out?
What in the world do I do with that time? Yeah. And to your point, like, how do we parent kids, right? If I don't know how to make a friend, if I don't know how to be a friend, how do I teach my kids how to make a friend, how to be a friend? Our role as parents is to help our children be fully functional humans, right? When they leave the nest, so to speak, we want them to thrive in every way. And one of the most important ways that they need to thrive is connection. We know that, but we do a really fairly poor job in general of equipping them in that way. We tell them where to go. We drive them around, go play with your sports teams, go sit in your classrooms. But those aren't really connections, right? Mm-hmm. That's proximity, and proximity is different than connection. Mm-hmm. And so what I did was, I'm an engineer. I'm an engineering manager, and I've, been in corporate America for a long time. And I'm oriented towards solving problems, right? And so I had this internal moment where I realized I have this problem that I have to solve. And so I sat back for a while. I'm talking a couple years, really, where I'm just trying to internalize, is there, and I was trying to invest in people at the same time, and trying and failing and trying some things and at least spending more effort and energy. But my aha moment was really this realization that the people who have great relationships differ from the people who don't have great relationships in one really key way, and that is their ability to ask great questions and the attention and in sort of listening behaviors around that. But really, it comes down to asking great questions. And that's
please unpack more of that, because the idea is sort of, quote, getting real with people, really asking and driving into the sense of, no, I really want to enter into your world. I want to get to know you better, as opposed to just talking about the weather or something at a cursory level. So it makes sense.
Yeah. And I cheated a little bit because I happen to be married to a woman who everyone loves. She was homecoming queen of our high school and homecoming queen of our college, because she knows how to ask great questions, and she's extremely intentional and attentive to people. And so I had this front row seat, and it really only dawned on me, just that, a few number of years ago, that like, that's the thing that sets her apart. Yeah. And contrasting that with other people in my life that are like not great at relationship, it was actually, I was surprised I didn't see it earlier. And so, so there's this posture that I have now that I value in other people, and that I try to foster in myself, which is this orientation towards curiosity and humility. Yeah. Curiosity and humility.
And curiosity and humility, it goes back to, you often hear parents say, you've got to, the child asks, how do I make friends? Well, you've got to be a friend to make a friend. But again, it begs the question, what does it mean to be a friend? And is being a friend just hanging out in the same room, or is being a friend entering into conversation? And one of the great things in your book that I'd love to hear more about are just the way you differentiate the different ways that we talk, the talk types, because it seems like I loved seeing that for the first time in your book, where you've really broken it out, because just sort of being in the room with somebody and having some, quote, conversations, maybe even asking a generic question, still isn't really getting you where you need to go. So will you share a little bit of, how that understanding of how to actually have deep questions and thoughtful conversation types came about?
Yeah. Thank you for bringing this up, because I think it's a useful way for people to think about their conversations. I actually lurk a lot near conversations.
Okay. Start by lurking. Yeah, no.
And I listen to how people interact. I watch how people interact.
And what do you typically see?
It's not wonderful.
Okay. A lot of weather talk and sports talk and that kind of thing.
Well, and weather and sports, even weather and sports, I guess, can be okay topics because, they're universal, fine. At least weather is universal. Food is universal. Right. Whatever the passing of the seasons sort of time is universal. All these kind of things are universal. So fine. Like that can provide context for a decent conversation. But how we approach these conversations is so surface level usually. So everybody's familiar with small talk, right? Mm-hmm. So, hey, Davies, looks like rain, right?
Back to the weather.
What are we doing? Like, what is the point of saying that? And literally, I hate when people approach a conversation like that, because they're not trying to know you, right? They're just filling space. It's like, I feel uncomfortable with silence, so I'm just going to say it.
I always feel this on the elevators with people. Like, how many floors do I have? If I'm going to say something, what do I say? Let's talk about the weather. It's exactly. I mean, it's hard on an elevator to have a big conversation anyhow.
That's a good one. Yeah. No, for real. Yeah. So, but let's think about other questions we can try, that's still using that same context of weather. So when I am talking with somebody who's a stranger that I may never see again, or an acquaintance, I might say something like, what do you like to do when it rains?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to elicit a story. I'm not asking them to be vulnerable, right? This is not a close relationship. I don't want to make them uncomfortable, but eliciting a story is actually a really valuable thing. It psychologically, it actually makes us happy to ask questions and to respond with story. So there's value in just sort of making those brief moments of connection. It's not deep connection. I don't want to overstate it. But you're with the barista, going through Starbucks or out here in the Pacific Northwest, Dutch Bros, and they're asking questions. Actually, they're asking medium talk questions. This is a medium talk question, right? And they'll say something like, well, what's the most exciting part of your day or whatever. That's a medium talk question. It's a good question. Now, they ask it of every single person that goes through the line.
I was going to say, somebody's been training that question a lot, but what do you like to do when it rains? That would catch me off guard if the Starbucks barista asked me that one. I'm like, well, wow, I'm thinking about that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and so this is just an example using weather, but how about medium plus? So medium plus is this next level. So these are for acquaintances that maybe you want to grow into a friendship, or it's friends, maybe close friends, maybe not so close friends, but you're looking for just a little bit of vulnerability. So you say something like, how do you feel when it rains for a week? So you're trying to get into like values and beliefs and emotion, right? So Davies, how do you feel when it rains for a week?
It depends on where I am. If I'm on vacation, it might be a really unfortunate feeling. If it's if I have work to do and I don't want to go outside now, yeah, I mean, it elicits sort of further explanation, or it could just be it's soothing and relaxing and it's perfect when I'm trying to take a nap, So it just depends. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's unique to you and it helps the person know you. It's connective.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then deep talk. And so we're a little bit familiar with deep talk. This isn't something you want to use with a random, person on the street for sure, but something like, what's a time you were terrified by nature?
Yeah. Are you asking me that? Is that a real question? Yeah.
Do you want to answer that? I would not ask that.
That's a little bit of an awkward question. No,
I would answer.
No, I immediately am thinking about a camping trip here in Idaho a number of years ago, and we were camping, and there was a very intense storm that came through, and it was terrifying. And I'm like, oh, I hope this tent's going to hold. And yeah, you kind of come face to face with just how small and vulnerable you are in the giant world when you're out in an environment like that. So it's a great question. I get it. It's a vulnerability type of question.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine is actually similar. You made me kind of process
a little
bit. And, we were back in 2011, we spent a year traveling the country in an RV, and we got chased around kind of by tornadoes. They were kind of, we were moving into their path, or they were moving into ours. Yeah. I'm not really sure which it was, but I just remember that moment, where you're just like, I sure hope, that tornado doesn't turn this way.
Well, these are great reminders, and I love that you've broken them out into these categories, because I think too often it's like, what should we do? We should ask questions, and then we're fumbling to do that. I think especially in the context of the school, the number of times parents have asked me and have appreciated them. I mean, you've done recordings with us for Zipcast, and part of the value of that car drive time is that it's kind of a captive audience. And so, how do you really go deep with your children? And when you pick them up, is the only question you ask is, how was your day? Good. How did you do in your test?
I hate that question. I hate that question so much.
It's like, I know. It's like, could we maybe think of something a little bit more? Because otherwise you're going to get a single answer response. You've lost the opportunity to go deep. So again, there's so many practical environments other than elevator rides that we're, going to need to put all of this into practice. So why don't we take a break? I want to come back and delve into this a little bit more, especially when, really get into this idea of meaning and friendships and really the goal of friendships, because that is, again, something that's just so foreign, unfortunately, in our culture today. And so the art of making friends and going deeper is a really vital conversation for all of us. We'll be right back after the break.
The road to graduation begins early and takes many paths. And without a skilled guide, it can feel overwhelming. The career coaches at Life Architects empower students to discover who God created them to be through our unique vocational discipleship model. You can bring this graduation game changer to your school through one-on-one student coaching, on-campus workshops, or even faculty training. Visit lifearchitectscoaching.com today.
Hi there, classical Christian parents, students, and teachers. This is Robert Littlejohn, co-author with Charles Evans of Wisdom and Eloquence, a Christian paradigm for classical learning, published by Crossway Books. We want you to know about our new book with well-known family counselor Keith McCurdy, published by Classical Academic Press. The book is titled Wisdom and Eloquence for Parents: How Classical Christian Education Can Transform Your Children, Your Family, and the World. We have written this shorter, parent-focused book specifically as an admissions and parent education resource for schools and families. We are excited to be proud sponsors of Zipcast and BaseCamp Live, and we hope you are enjoying these two great resources for classical learning as much as we are. And we would invite you to visit our website, wisdomandeloquence.org, to explore the various services offered by the authors of Wisdom and Eloquence for Parents, and to let us know how we can best serve you. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
Dirk, we began earlier talking about just the need for friendship. It's, I don't know. I'm curious when sort of what's realistic. I mean, we talked about how the 2 a.m. problem, but I mean, like a healthy, normal person, you don't have, 20 really close friends. I mean, you have a few acquaintances, you're from acquaintances into friends. So when do you leave acquaintance land and become a friend? What does a friend really look like versus an acquaintance?
That's a great observation. We don't need 15 close friends. Mm-hmm. There's this researcher named Robin Dunbar that's studied friendship extensively. Really interesting work. We have dozens, hundreds of acquaintances. You see them at church, you see them at school, wherever, you see them at work. You know them a little bit, something about them, their name, right. Maybe if they're married, their, kids' names, maybe, right? Not much.
Right.
That's fine, actually. And you might have a set of friends, say 10, where you might enjoy doing some things together, maybe group stuff, maybe you kind of get together once in a while, once a month, once every 2 months, you enjoy seeing each other, you enjoy spending time together. You're not super intentional with the relationship. You don't spend a lot of time one-on-one.
Yeah.
Perhaps. And then what's the most important part, and this is what we were talking about earlier, like who's that core group of people that you might be able to call at 2 a.m. and they might be happy to receive that call. We really just need a few. We need, let's say 3, 2, maybe, hopefully not 0 or 1. It actually takes a lot of investment to manage and maintain these relationships. So if you're trying to maintain more than about 5 close friends, you're probably going to find it to be pretty difficult. Let's just think about Jesus' example for a minute, because Jesus had, the Bible tells us he had like basically 72 acquaintances. These are disciples that followed him around. They kind of did life together, but they weren't super close. Yeah. And then he had 12 apostles. He did a lot of life with the 12 apostles, but there were 3 that he was extremely close with. Those were his inner circle. And I think that's a great model. I mean, those numbers actually work really well. And that's what I've tried to cultivate in my life is 3 close relationships.
So, yeah, I was about to, as you were saying that, I mean, well, the Trinity, interesting, is 3. So, you mean, and they are in community. I mean, it makes sense. 3 seems pretty manageable in that sense. So what's the rhythm of that kind of a friendship then? Is that a call and check in every day? I mean, what does that look like practically?
Yeah, I mean, maybe, I suppose everybody's different a little bit. I'll tell you what I did and what I do. Back in 2018, when I was looking around saying, kind of asking myself, who am I going to invest in and what is that going to look like? I had one friend that I had, again, not a close friend at that time. I wouldn't look back and consider him a close friend in 2018, but we'd actually done a lot of life together. And I said, and we like to play tennis every Saturday. And so I said one day, hey, instead of just playing tennis, what do you think about maybe let's have coffee also after tennis? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. I mean, why not? And that has developed into a rhythm for us every week, rain or shine. Sometimes we're not able to play tennis. Maybe we're injured or it's raining. We still get together every week and we spend a couple hours over coffee, one-on-one, face-to-face, and we just explore life together. And, since then I've picked up, 2 other close friends and the rhythm is kind of similar. It's really, really important. The thing I want to emphasize here is like forming a close friendship is actually a big investment. It takes about 200 hours of intentional investment in another person to create this bond that we would consider to be close friendship. And so choose wisely. I mean, one of the quotes I love is Jim Rohn. He's since passed now, but he was, had some really interesting ideas and thoughts. And one of the things that he said, which I like, is you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a great quote. And I think that, so I'm thinking, I've got my parent hat on as you're explaining that. So I'm thinking about it personally. So how do I, as an adult, find who are those people and how do I create those 200 hours?
Yes.
And then I'm thinking as a parent, again, the go out and play with your friends is not intuitive to children that don't really know how to go and find friends. There's a statistic that I saw not long ago that's roughly 50+% of young adult boys between 15 and 25 have never had a conversation with a female other than their mom in terms of like knowing how to walk up and have any kind of human to human exchange and engagement. And I see that all the time where parents are introducing their child and the child is looking at the ground and feeling awkward and never really been taught how to look an adult in the eye and shake their hand. I mean, at that level, we have to teach them, it seems, today. But even more, how in the world do you even, do you put that in your schedule? Like after the soccer game, we're going to go do our friendship hour so we can get to the 200 hours. Like how does that get sort of scripted into the rhythm of the modern family?
Wow. You covered a lot of ground there, Davies.
Yeah, there's a lot. I'm like, wow, that is, however you want to dissect that, but yes.
Well, the first thing I would say is, I'm a parent also, right? My kids are a little bit older now. They're 22, 20, and 18. And I like to think that I've educated them well about how to form connection and how to, be a good friend. Only they can judge maybe, or time will tell. But, the first thing I would say is, let's kind of focus on our own lives. Like we need to be experts at this if we want to educate our kids well about how to form a friendship and how to be a good friend. Like we need to know how to do that. Like, and a lot of the reason I feel like that we sort of park a kid in a classroom or park a kid on a sports team or park a kid on the playground and just tell them to, go make a friend. Like literally that's all the instruction we give sometimes. I think it's because maybe we're not really sure how to do that either. And maybe they'll just figure it out. I think that's not probably the best approach. So the sequence, I guess, that I would recommend is like this, sit down and figure out like what's actually really important to you. Hopefully it's not like I have a friend that plays tennis. That's not the most important thing about him to me, right? It's nice. That's nice. That forms a little bit of context for us. But there are other things that I value a lot more. So what's on your list of criteria? And it's a lot like identifying a potential spouse. Like we're sort of comfortable with this idea that maybe I should have a list of important traits and attributes and beliefs and values. And there's sort of a red line sometimes. Like if they're not, for me, if they're not humble and curious, I'm like, maybe that's not a person I'm going to invest in, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So make your list. And then, after that, you kind of pursue them, right? Spend time together intentionally, make it a regular adventure for some number of weeks, and some of that, a good part of that has to be face-to-face, one-on-one. That's really the only opportunity we have to connect at a deep level, right? If we're in a group, it's kind of like, you can connect a little bit in a group, but it's limited. And if you're just doing it if you're doing an activity together, like let's go play basketball, like that's never connective, right? You don't know anything about somebody after you play basketball, even 50 times with them. Like it's very, very surface, right? Other than sort of their emotions when they win or lose, right? And some of those things, which are not nothing, but sure. And then the third step to me is be really intentional. And again, this is like, and voice your intent. Like, I had this conversation years and years ago with my one tennis buddy. I was like, and it felt a little awkward the first time I did it, but now I've done it a few times. And so it's less awkward. I'm like, hey, so I actually really like, hanging out with you. Like I'm enjoying these coffee discussions. Would you like to be closer friends? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What I'm hearing is there's an intentionality and even some formality that it feels very foreign. At the same time, I think as I'm putting on my parent hat, I can think of, when the kids are really young, you set up play dates. It's like you literally structure time so they can play with their peers. And then somewhere after early grammar school, it really just sort of, I guess we all assume it happens organically and just, birds of a feather flock together or whatever. And it's still not really, it's just sort of by proximity or they're on the sports team together. And then they've never really been tutored and taught how to have the friendship, which you're describing. And then that's part of it is actually having it's almost, now you're kind of comparing it to dating, but it's like there is a sort of a pattern in dating, I would think, where you kind of decide at what point have you kind of left friend space to be even more intentional. So it's really fascinating because I don't think most of us think in those structured ways.
Yeah. But, to me, like the relationship between close friend and dating partner or spouse, it's not that different. Like we're trying to find somebody to invest a lot of ourselves into. We want to spend a lot of time with this person. It's not just a basketball buddy. It's not just a person to share knitting patterns with or whatever your hobby is, right? You're sharing life with this person. So why not, be really, really intentional?
But don't you think, I mean, again, this is a whole other probably podcast, but I mean, men and women are different in this way. I think men tend to be like, let's get together just so we can get to know each other better. It's like, and do what? Why would we do that? Like, hey, let's, it is interesting. Like, let's go play golf together, or let's fix the car together, or let's go hunting together. I mean, these, somewhere I've heard, men tend to do better, like shoulder to shoulder walking next to each other to have those real conversations than this sort of deep stare in your eyes and sip tea together. I mean, so men and women kind of need to have different settings, and in that setting, how the intentionality it sounds like.
Let's talk about men and women just for a minute. So,
okay, because
so women are better at having vulnerable, personal, sometimes deep conversations, right? They're more in touch with their own emotions, and they're more interested in being in touch with other people's emotions. It's true. Yeah. The thing I would say to women is the thing that I've observed, because I lurk a lot, you remember? My one suggestion for women is a lot of women, in my experience, right? Not all, but a lot of women are really comfortable talking about their own inner world. And they're not actually that interested in hearing about somebody else's inner world. There's a lot of answering questions and not so much of asking questions. So to the women out there, good, you're halfway there. Yeah. And I'm generalizing just dramatically here, so I apologize. But but just be a little bit self-aware. If you feel like you're doing a lot of the talking, you may be. And just pause and like ask a question, and that's where the connection really happens. It's a two-direction. It's bidirectional. Yeah. It has to be bidirectional. So that's the one thing I would say, just to overgeneralize for women. And for men, let's continue overgeneralizing for a minute and offend the rest of your audience. Men gravitate towards shoulder to shoulder, side by side activity. They want to go form a team and accomplish a goal. And that's a great thing. It's a terrific thing. I'm so grateful that, men are like this, right? Because they accomplish things. But I'm sorry, I'm the bearer of bad news here, but you got to slow down and pivot and make the time and space to have one-on-one, real, vulnerable interaction with one other guy, or you're going to feel lonely because you are. Authentic belonging isn't like sort of a gender construct. Like it's not just for women. Authentic belonging is critically important for all of us. And so is it a little bit harder for men? Yeah, it probably is. And go do the hard thing, man.
Well, it's a good term, authentic belonging, because there's degrees of success in this, and this is again kind of the theme of this conversation is how do we really set ourselves up and our children to engage in the world in a way that there's intentionality in building friendships. So let's take one more break, and we come back. Would love just to give some final thoughts and encouragement, practical things again that we can put into our daily routine as parents and even as educators when we have even young people in the classroom. How do we help generate communities that really build up friendship? That's really so important. So we'll be right back after the break. During this short break, I have a special invitation to all school leaders, administrators, and teachers. I want you to imagine for a moment stepping away from your everyday routine at school and diving deep into the rich foundations of Christian education, surrounded by world-class scholars, seasoned classroom teachers, and administrative experts with years of experience running schools with a lot of wisdom to share. That's exactly what the Herzog Foundation's Institute is offering. I've had the joy of serving as a training coach for the last few years, leading their 2.5-day training on spiritual formation and another one on parent engagement. They offer close to 50 unique training events ranging from board governance to marketing to classroom best practices. They even offer a training on how to teach the great books. And the best part of all, well, thanks to the generosity of the Herzog Foundation, these training events, including lodging, are completely free for Christian educators. Institutes are located around the country in beautiful locations, including at the Museum of the Bible in Washington, D.C., and the Reagan Library in Santa Barbara. Don't miss this incredible opportunity. Check out the details at theherzogfoundation.com. If you're seeking an education that helps your child thrive academically and spiritually, Wilson Hill Academy has spent years developing a model that I want you to know about. In their free guide, you'll see how their thoughtfully sequenced curriculum prepares students for college and how a biblical worldview helps them understand the world around them with clarity, and how their discussion-based classes teach them to think critically, not just what to think. You'll also discover how their teachers equip students to live purposefully for Christ. With accredited live online classes, your child can learn from master teachers anywhere with an internet connection, all within a community that has transformed families like yours. Download their free guide today at wilsonhillacademy.com/guide or in the link in our show notes. Dirk, in our final segment, I want us to make sure we've had time to really unpack. We've talked about friendship and what it really means to have more than just cursory friends and to go deep, but ultimately it really gets into, I know in your book, you talk about this idea of really meaning. I mean, this is the essence of what it means to be human, is to be connected. So I want to make sure we give you a chance just to share a little bit of your thoughts there.
Yeah, absolutely. I broached this phrase, authentic belonging. That's one of our three sources of meaning. And so when we think about friendship, when we think about connection and relationship, we're not just trying to solve like this sort of modern problem. Well, gee, everybody seems kind of a little bit lonely, so let's figure out how to be less lonely. There's actually this need deep inside of us that we've always had. It's not new. We need to be connected to other people. And that is one of our three sources of meaning. And I just want to pause here and say, when we think about meaning, there's English is kind of it's an imprecise language, and so I want to just make sure people understand, like, there's a difference between talking about the meaning of life and the meaning in life, or a meaning in a life. And so the meaning of life is this sort of philosophical question. It's like probably unanswerable. We can debate. I have opinions. Everybody has opinions. I'm happy to share mine, but it means not that much because, scientifically, we can't really determine which opinion is correct. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking about the meaning of life, other than appreciating the Hitchhiker's Guide to a Galaxy, answer of, 42. So the meaning in my life, though, that's something we can answer. And that's something psychologists have been studying for decades, starting, I think, in earnest, really, with Viktor Frankl. Just after World War II, he was, unfortunately, imprisoned in a series of concentration camps, and, developed, some ideas through his own suffering and through experiencing, the suffering through other people's eyes and experiences. And, from him, we've had, decades of additional research and work in this area of meaning. And so what I'm doing in my Substack is, developing this framework of meaning, where I pull together all the different, decades of research, that help us understand our sources of meaning and how we can find a way to live a more meaningful life, right? So authentic belonging is one thing. That's really why it's important for us to have friendships, right? Because authentic belonging is a source of meaning. The other two sources are transcendent purpose, where we've got some purpose that's outside of ourselves. And, so it's not self-related. That's the difference. Self-transcendent is just sort of outside of ourselves. Self-related means it's sort of reflected back at ourselves, So, Christian faith is actually a great transcendent purpose.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. And that makes, it's we're obviously trying to raise ourselves and our children up to pursue and to love true, good, and beautiful things are much greater. I mean, we call them the transcendentals. These are things that are bigger than yourself, which is so critical.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then the third one is self-compassion and growth, which is sort of it's our inner source, where we're expressing inner kindness and, we're growing through our challenges and things like that. The thing I want to draw your attention to is there's this, my very favorite, passage in the Bible is the two greatest commandments, right? Mm-hmm. I call them the three great instructions. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Mm-hmm. So I like to think of them as instructions because I feel like Jesus just knew us, right? He knew what we needed. And I love this verse that comes right after, all the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments, which is great for a guy like me because I'm not super good at remembering, the hundreds of commands in the Old Testament. And I'm just frankly not interested in it. So I'm entranced by this idea that, Jesus was wise enough to point us towards these three things: love God, love self, love others. And if you think about what I just laid out as our sources of meaning that have been established by the psychological community, transcendent purpose is love God, self-compassion and growth is love self, authentic belonging is love others, love God, love self, love others, right? That's what underpins my book, Why We Ask. It's not just about asking questions for the sake of asking questions. It's about asking questions that connect us, that connect us to God, questions that connect us to ourselves, and questions that connect us to others.
It strikes me as you're saying that. I mean, it's also a good framework for when you do have coffee with someone and you start talking about where are you both on those three priority sets of self, God, and others, because it's a life journey of understanding how to have a deeper faith and a deeper friendship and to serve better. And so that's a good backdrop.
Territory. Yeah. That is medium plus territory. I love that so much, Davies. Mm-hmm. I absolutely do that with my friends.
Yeah.
And my kids.
I would think that's exactly right. I mean, it's really, to the theme of this conversation, it's friendship, towards something mutual. It's not just chattering conversation to pass the time. And because we're on this journey together in life, and that's where we need each other. So, well, Dirk, there's a lot more we talk about. I know time is short. If folks are interested in, you've mentioned your Substack, where can people find it? You've mentioned the book. Share again where those resources are best found.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Davies. So my book is most easily found in Amazon. It's called Why We Ask. And please check it out. Give it a try.
Sure.
And I will say this, it's designed in a way to be read together. So form a book club or grab a friend or an acquaintance with whom you want to develop a relationship with or deepen your relationship with. Buy 2 copies and meet together for 14 weeks. I promise you, after 14 weeks, you're either going to hate the person, that's possible, or you're going to have a real deep connection with this person.
Wow.
Right? An hour and a half every Saturday over coffee for 14 weeks. Give it a try. And
I love that it's literally, here's the handbook. Go, fire up the caffeine and get going. And that's, and I'm sure there's lots of derivative wisdom in there for a parent to say to a child, here's best practices of things to set up. So, well, Dirk, you've given us a lot to think about. It's been encouraging and really a call of inspiration, because I think there is no doubt all of us feel that sense of we could do a better job at going deeper with people in our scattered age. So thank you for all of your thoughts and contributions.
Thank you, Davies.
Thank you for listening to this episode of BaseCamp Live. Be sure to check out our website, basecamplive.com, for more than 8 years of timeless episodes that you'll find helpful and encouraging, as well as the helpful resources offered on our partners page. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of our partners like the Herzog Foundation. See you back next week.